How's it going, everyone? I'm Jakejames Lugo, and welcome to the channel. So let's return to the world of Final Fantasy 15, but not in the way that you might think. With all the different side stories and spin-off games that this series has had, let's take a look at one that was related to Final Fantasy 15 and came out around the same time as that game did. This is my look at A King's Tale, Final Fantasy 15. Chances are, if you were following all of the news about Final Fantasy 15 back in the day, you probably saw all of the different side stories and supplemental material that came out for it. One of them was A King's Tale Final Fantasy 15, a story that was set about 30 years prior to the events of Final Fantasy 15. A King's Tale is a side-scrolling brawler rather than a role-playing game, but it still has some of the typical Final Fantasy Easter eggs and fan service within it. There's even some light connections to the events of Final Fantasy 15, but they're very subtle. The plot follows Noctis' father, Regis Lucius Kylum, before he becomes the King of Insomnia. We see events told through the lens of a bedtime story that Regis tells his son one night. In his story, Regis battles a swarm of monsters led by a mysterious figure as they try to invade Insomnia and try to steal the blue crystal from within the kingdom. Regis teams up with his friends Cid Sofiar, Claris Armasitia, and Weskham Armagh in pursuit of the monsters, which leads them to the Cave of Nostal. Along the way, they discover other astral crystals that are being taken by the mysterious figure, who is eventually revealed to be the being known as Ultros. The group dives into battle to retrieve the crystals and stop Ultros before it could claim the power of the Astrals for itself. This is a very self-contained story that is far removed from the events of Final Fantasy 15, but it does add a bit of mystique to King Regis and his backstory. However, as a spin-off game, does A King's Tale Final Fantasy 15 have enough within it to warrant fans of the series to dive in? So if I'm being honest, and if we're all being honest here, the story of A King's Tale isn't all that great. It's very shallow, and in hindsight, it doesn't really add much to Final Fantasy 15 whatsoever. Granted, this is a side story, and it's not really supposed to really influence the events of that game, but it would be nice to get some sort of setup, or even certain things more fleshed out, or certain characters be given a little bit more insight about them, in relation to that other game. But what we got here is just kind of meh. I mean, even with the way that King Regis tells Noctis the story, it's almost like he's being a little facetious in some spots, where certain events may have happened or not have happened in the way that he describes them. That's a cool setup for a story, but again, as a fan who actually liked Final Fantasy 15, and I'm pretty sure some of you out there might feel the same way, I wish that there was a little bit more that kind of again, gave me a little bit more tidbits to chew on about that world in relation to what happened in that game later on. The other part about this is that it kind of sucks because most other Final Fantasy spin-off games, you could kind of go in without knowing what happens in the previous game or other game that it's related to. You can't really do that with A King's Tale whatsoever. If you don't know who King Regis is, or if you don't know who Noctis is, or any of the other little Easter eggs that are littered around and stuff, you're not really going to appreciate them, you're not going to have any sort of context for them, you're not really going to care. Okay, so the story might be a little bit blah for some people, but what about the gameplay? Is it something that's very good and something that people can latch onto? Yes and no. The combat in this game could be very familiar, especially if you played other brawlers before. A King's Tale has you controlling Regis and using a variety of combo attacks and magic to fight enemies. You'll take on a few notable Final Fantasy monsters, but not everything is really memorable here. It's cool seeing the Bombs, Tomberry, Cactuar, and even the Behemoth, but stuff like the Ronins are just super random and don't fit well amongst everything else. When fighting, you'll sometimes have to use specific attacks, like a shield bash or a heavy attack, in order to stun an enemy before you could do some real damage. This gets annoying, however, when fighting larger groups of enemies, and your attacks are instantly blocked when you don't stun them beforehand. The game has a tendency to throw multiple baddies at you that all require different attacks to stun them, forcing you to roam around the area until you can find an opening. Luckily, this could be broken up if you manage to land enough hits without being damaged and call in one of your allies. You can have Weskham, Cid, or Claris throw out an attack in front of you, but you can't launch them at specific targets. They just attack nearby enemies at random. If you manage to call in each one of your allies at least once during battle, you could then have Regis use his Armiger ability to execute a big team attack. This makes everyone appear to attack random enemies, but also does a bit more damage. The best time to use this would be against boss characters you run into, even though there's very few of them in the entire game. The final battle against Ultros is a bit more complex than previous stages, but once you are able to use your Armiger and call in your allies, the entire fight becomes pretty easy. Overall, while it's simple to get into, A King's Tale does try to implement a few extra layers to the combat. But I can't lie when I say that I wish there was some more elements inspired by Final Fantasy XV in here. I feel like that would make the game feel a little bit more unique. Something I haven't really talked a lot about is the use of magic in this game, which it's cool to have in there. It's nice to be able to use magic since it's part of the Final Fantasy XV world and just Final Fantasy in general, but it's kind of thrown in there as like an afterthought. Yes, you do have to use magic against certain enemies in order to destroy them with one hit, which is primarily the flans that you see lurking around here and there, but outside of that, against other enemies, magic doesn't really do much. It does deal a little bit of damage and does have a few status effects, but outside of that, they're really not the best option to really use against those enemies. You're better off just calling in one of your allies and destroying most enemies with one hit like that. The other thing that is a shame to see in the way that it's implemented is the summons, the astrals themselves, which are cool to see. They do look fantastic in here, but you only really see them a few times and you don't really have control over them. They're kind of just there as like set pieces for the stages as you complete them. It would have been awesome to see some sort of like uses for the astrals, themselves, to call them like, in random spots when there's a lot of enemies, in multiple stages, not just that one stage that you maybe run into their crystal. That would have been something very cool, but the way that they're kind of implemented into here is, again, another afterthought that just is something that's just not really utilized to its full potential. So with all that being said, let's talk a little bit about some of the extra content that's in A King's Tale Final Fantasy XV. Is it any good, or is it something that really gives a lot to Final Fantasy XV fans? Not really. Okay, real talk, A King's Tale Final Fantasy XV is a very short game. You could finish it in about an hour, maybe longer if you decide to complete everything within it. When you finish the main story, you unlock the Dream Battles. These are 25 unique stages with bonus objectives. The sad part here is that you don't get anything for completing all of them. Yes, you do get a few trophies and achievements, but nothing beyond that. You're graded on your performance when you finish a stage within Dream Battles, but there's no big reward for getting the highest rating or finishing every single stage with high rankings. So if you were hoping for something special at the end, trust me, you're going to be very disappointed. But you know what's really stupid in this game? There's a quote-unquote alternate ending to the final battle with Ultros, but it's not really what you think it is. If you let Ultros grab the final crystal during the last fight, it will just say an extra line of dialogue before restarting the battle over again. That's it. That's really not an alternate ending. It's just a silly thing for you to do in order to get another trophy or achievement. I honestly wish that we actually got a bonus screen or a different cutscene for doing something like this. That would actually be pretty interesting. Alas, there's nothing else to get excited about within A King's Tale once you finish it. It's really that shallow. Then again, what can you really expect from a game that was offered as a free download alongside another bigger game? Outside of the fact that this is like a supplemental download to Final Fantasy XV and the fact that we have like a fake alternate ending, I really do wish that a little bit more time and effort went into making A King's Tale to provide a little bit more quantity of content, just like extra stuff or little tidbits of like story or other stuff for Final Fantasy XV fans to really enjoy. So after everything that I've said, can I recommend that you guys check out A King's Tale Final Fantasy XV? If I'm being straight up with all of you, you could honestly skip this. There's really not much to be gained from playing it. It's a neat distraction or something that's a little bit interesting at first to get away from Final Fantasy XV, but if you're a big fan of that game or if you just love the whole world of Insomnia and just in general Final Fantasy XV itself, there's really not much you're going to gain by playing through this. It's a small side story that has some of the characters from that game and gives a little bit of like mystique and backstory to a few of them, but not enough to really kind of flesh out their characters in Final Fantasy XV or to really build up the world itself. I really do wish there was a little bit more value in here, some more extras, or other elements to the gameplay that was inspired by Final Fantasy 15, but what we got here is just a basic brawler that is very short, it doesn't take a long time to complete, and a mild distraction from anything else. Again, it is a free download. If you haven't gotten it already, I highly suggest that you do pick it up and check it out. Again, just on the simple basis that it's free, but if you just value your time and you want something that you're really going to get a lot out of from putting the time into playing it, this is something I feel like you won't lose anything by skipping over it. And that is that. Those are my overall thoughts about A King's Tale Final Fantasy 15. I know it's a random game to kind of throw into the mix of just other games I reviewed on this channel, but it's kind of funny because that's how I feel like this game was made. It's just a random game to be thrown into the mix of things and just be put out there with no real kind of like agenda or any other things behind it. But like anything else that I've reviewed on this channel, those are just my opinions about A King's Tale. Let me know what you guys think about this game down below in the comments section. Tell me, have you played A King's Tale? Do you like the world of Final Fantasy 15? What are some of your other favorite Final Fantasy spin-offs? It could be anything. I know a lot of people love Crystal Chronicles, a lot of people love Tactics, hell, even Chocobo Dungeon I hear has a big fan base. Tell me about that stuff down below in the comments section. Thanks for watching this video, everyone. Go ahead and click the boxes on the side to see more videos and subscribe to my YouTube channel. Don't forget to go visit my Patreon page for exclusive gaming content that I know you'll really love. Hope you have a chill day. Peace out and stay epic, everybody.